Welcome to this class. Today we're going to be looking at inversions and how they can help with our brain health. So before you start panicking and thinking of things like handstand and headstand, yes, they are inversions, but that's not what we're going to be practicing today. We're going to be looking at more gentle inversions. So first of all, what is an inversion? It's basically any pose or posture where the head is lower than the heart. So it doesn't automatically mean the whole body is inverted, so we're sort of like on our hands or on our head with the legs in the air. It's not always the case. And how can it benefit your brain health? Well, this is scientifically proven that if we spent a few minutes every day inverted, so you could pick just one pose and practice it for say 5 minutes, then it's going to really help to refresh the oxygen flow to the brain. So the brain is the organ of the body that requires the most oxygen. So by being inverted, we're going to aid that oxygen through the blood flow to get to the brain, which is going to help to increase its health. And another really beneficial thing is it helps to reverse the effects of gravity on our bodies. And it's not something we tend to think about, but if you think about that downward force of gravity on our body all the time, it's nice to go upside down and just reverse that, just refresh the body, the blood flow, the oxygen flow and everything. So we're going to start in one that you probably already know. So some of these poses might surprise you because you probably already practiced them tons of times and not really occurred to you that it's an inversion. So we're going to start in a child's pose. So you can take any version that suits you. So I personally prefer to have my legs wide and then reach my arms forwards. You might prefer to have the legs parallel, reach the arms back and come forwards. It just all depends on your body. I don't like to be sort of scrunched up. Another thing just to mention, so if you still have periods, then some of the postures, it's not really ideal to be practicing inversions whilst you're bleeding, just because it disrupts that downward flow of energy. It is entirely up to you. When it's later into your flow or, things are slowing down, it's absolutely fine. I mean, even if you practice whilst you're bleeding, it's not a massive deal. It's not going to hurt you or affect your health in any way. It's just really believed to affect the downward flow of energy. And obviously, when we're bleeding, what we're really doing is cleansing out our system, releasing what we don't need anymore. So it's entirely up to you, but it is sort of guidance not to practice inversions during the first few days or the heaviest days of your flow. So coming into your child's pose, whichever version you've chosen, and allowing the head to rest down onto the ground. So really just noticing if your head is lower than your heart, and noticing how that feels. Now, inversions aren't necessarily good for everybody. So if you have high blood pressure and you're not on any kind of medication for it, then just be really careful and just really feel your way. You should already know what kind of things make you feel dizzy. And when we get to some of the inversions later on, if you have any neck issues or spinal issues, then again, just practicing within the limitations of your own body, really. It's entirely down to you whether you choose to practice these. I'm just guiding you through them. You absolutely do not have to do everything. So just go with things that feel right for you. And in your child's pose, just bring your attention to any point of the body that is touching the ground. So the forehead, the front of the legs, front of the lower legs, should I say. Maybe the tops of the feet, the forearms, the hands. Just really notice how it feels to be supported by the ground beneath you. Just trying to cultivate a nice steady rhythm with the breath. And you might want to gently start rocking the head side to side, maybe moving the hips side to side. You can be still, it's entirely your choice. Whilst we're in this child's pose, I'd just like you to notice how you actually feel in your mind today. It might sound like a bit of a strange question, but just really noticing, maybe does your brain feel a little bit foggy today? Do you feel sort of tired, like you don't want to be thinking too much? Maybe your brain feels quite alert. But just really try and hone in on how you feel mentally today. Not so much your mood, just really how focused you are. Maybe give it a number on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being really unfocused and 10 being sort of really awake and focused. Lovely. And then from here we're just going to walk the hands over towards the left side of your mat. Bring that right hand on top. Just taking some breaths into the side of the body. Just feel that stretch all along the right side. Slowly walk the hands through centre, take them over towards the right now. Left hand comes on top. Again, just breathing into that left side of the body. And coming back to centre. And then we're just very, very slowly going to start to lift the head. We're coming up to all fours. Take your time getting there. So this is really important when we sort of transition from having our head lower than our heart to being higher than the heart again, just so that we avoid any sort of feelings of dizziness. So coming to all fours, wrists underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips, and we'll just take a few rounds of cat and cow. So with your own breath, and absolutely feel free to freestyle here. You don't need to stick with the regular movement. You can make some circles, bump your hips about, just really feeling into the body and moving into the spine. Toes can be tucked or untucked, it really doesn't matter. And you can sort of move between that child's pose and coming forwards. Allow your body to guide you. Lovely. And then the next inversion that we're going to come to is puppy pose. So you've probably done this several times before. It might feel nice for you to have some support under your chest if you need that extra support, so you're not dumping your weight into your lower back. I personally don't really like anything underneath my chest because it squashes everything. It feels uncomfortable. So you could have it just in front of you, and then hips stay over the knees, walking the hands forward and lowering the chest, and then lowering the head to the ground. Just depends on how it feels for you. So have a little explore. So just walking the hands forwards, keeping the hips over the knees, And then melting the heart towards the ground. Forehead kisses the mat, or maybe you place a block underneath your forehead if it doesn't quite make it to the ground. And just keep the hips lifted so the bum's sticking into the air. And just see how it feels for your shoulders. If it feels a bit intense, you could always just drop the forearms to the ground. If you would like a little bit more into the shoulders, you can just bend the elbows, bring the palms together, and then reach the thumbs towards the back of the neck. Everyone's completely different. This will feel different in your body than it does to me. Just make sure you're not dumping any weight into your neck. So really that forehead is just resting on the ground. If you find that you are dumping a bit of weight, then I really would suggest that you drop the forearms to the ground just to take the weight out of your head and neck. So again, just breathing here. Just noticing. How does it feel for your breath in this position? I'm a little bit stuffy at the moment. I had a little bit of a cold, and it actually feels like it's loosening up my breath, so like I'm able to breathe more clearly again. And obviously, the better we're able to breathe, the better our brain will function, since it does require a lot of oxygen. I think sometimes we really underestimate the power of the breath. And you know, when you've been working away all day and you kind of like can't think of anything, just taking a few deep breaths can have a really big effect on your brain. So just getting a bit of fresh oxygen to it, just firing it up again. And just start to slowly make your way out of the pose, lifting the head very slowly, sitting back towards the heels. And we're just going to sit here for a few moments. Just allow our body to come back into a neutral position. So in that puppy's pose there was a bit of a back bend. Just bringing the spine back to neutral. Okay. And then coming back to all fours, just walk the hands forwards a little bit further than you normally would. We'll tuck the toes under, press into the feet and the hands, and then send the hips up and back, downward facing dog. So again, this is another inversion. Head is lower than the heart. So don't really focus too much on what the legs are doing. We're not really concerned whether they're straight or bent. I much prefer them to be bent and find some length through the spine. So again, you could bring in some props here if you wanted to. Rest your head onto some cushions or a bolster. Just have the head supported, it can feel really nice. If you are using any props here, just notice how it feels to have the top of the head in contact with something. It's not something we experience very often. Just notice any sensations around the top of the head. Might feel like tingling, buzzing. Lovely. And then from here, we're just going to walk towards the top of the mat into a forward fold. So avoiding your cushions or bolsters if you can. Just bringing the feet about hip width apart. Allow the upper body to be really heavy. So bend the knees. Just allow that upper body to fall down. And it might feel nice just to rest your arms onto something here. Just shake the head out gently. And then we'll take 3 really big cleansing breaths. So we'll breathe in through the nose. And then we'll exhale out through the mouth with a sigh. If you're ready, inhale. Pause at the top. And then exhale. Inhale. Fill the belly, the lungs, the chest. Pause. And exhale out through the mouth. One more. Inhale. And exhale. So that breath is called falling out breath, and it can be a really nice one when you're feeling a bit irritated or angry, just to let a bit of frustration out. It's also a really great way of getting some oxygen to the brain quickly, especially when we're in this inverted position here. Lovely. And then bring the hands to the ground. Just start to slowly lift the head up till you're about halfway. And walking the hands slowly up the legs as you come to a standing position. Really take your time here. And come to a mountain pose. If you feel comfortable to do so, just close the eyes for a moment and just notice. Does anything feel different? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I know for me, I feel a little bit lighter, like I'm able to sort of lift up taller from the floor. Lovely. And then we're going to come to our next inversion. So we're going to take a wide-legged forward fold. Many ways you can do this. So we're just going to step the feet out wide to start. You want them a comfortable distance apart. They don't need to be really wide, just so that they're sort of wider than hip distance. You could have a bolster in front of you. You could maybe use a chair, which I'll show you in a moment. So just starting with the hands on the hips. Take an inhale, lift up nice and tall, and then hinge from the hips to come forwards. And then continue that journey down. So for you, it might be resting the arms onto something. It might be resting the head onto something. Maybe you're comfortable just to hang and sort of dangle there. I'm just going to grab a chair to show you another option. So I really like using a chair for this. I'll turn it this way so you can see better. So with the chair in front of you, legs nice and wide, you can just come forwards, and you could either rest your arms on there or rest your head on there, or you can take the chair a little bit further ahead so that you're able to have your arms on the chair and just let the head dangle. So lots of different ways you can do this. Have a little play around and find one that really works for you. And it might be different sort of every time you come to this posture. There's a lot of factors that can affect how we enjoy a posture. For instance, I'm a little bit stuffy, so sometimes that can feel like a lot of pressure in your head and in your sinuses and around the eyes. It might not feel good to do this pose, in which case you could always just lift up halfway. And if you feel any tension in your neck, just gently shake the head out. And we're just going to hold here for another minute or so. But if at any point you need to come out, please do so. If you're not used to having your head upside down like this a great deal, then it can be a bit much to hold for any length of time. But if you're comfortable to remain where you are, just taking some deep breaths. And again, we're not really focusing on the legs in this posture, so if you feel it's a bit intense for the backs of the legs, just give your knees a little bend. And then we're just going to slowly start to lift up out of this pose. So just coming up halfway to start with, and just pause here. Make sure the hands are on the ground or onto something, just in case you feel a little dizziness. And we're actually going to be making our way down to the ground again, so it's entirely up to you how you get there. You might want to stand up first, but for me, I'm just going to bring my feet closer together and then kneel down. So keep any props that you have handy. I'm going to keep my bolster, although I might use a block instead in a moment. But I just want you to come and lie down on your back in constructive rest, so the knees bent, soles of the feet on the ground to start. So have any props that you're going to need. You'll either need a block or maybe some cushions. Just have them right by you so you can reach them. So I'm using my bolster, which is why I've kept it underneath my legs, just for the ease of getting it where I want it to be in a moment. But we're just going to pause in this constructive rest for a moment, allowing the spine a little moment of reset in a neutral position. So in all the previous postures, we kind of allowed gravity to work on taking the head down. So gravity is responsible for that downward force of our head. And now that we're lying down, gravity again is pressing our head downward, but we have that opposing force behind the head of the earth. So our head is more supported, it's not sort of dangling in space. And just notice how that feels as we work through the next few postures. Just noticing which, if any, of the inversions that we've done in this class you prefer. And then maybe see if you can commit to just practicing one a day, whether that's for 1 minute, 5 minutes. Just to really give your brain a boost, give your body a rest from that downward force of gravity. It's not something we can ever escape completely, but to have the body inverted and experience it the opposite way around can be so beneficial. Not just for our brains, but you know, for the effects that it has on our skeletal system. So, you know, any effects that gravity has forcing down on us all day, that will affect our spine. You may have sort of read or heard that if you measure yourself in the morning, you'll be a little bit taller than you are if you measure yourself in the evening, and that's because of that, the effects of gravity throughout the day. Just sort of slowly pressing us down, making us a little bit shorter. So it can be really nice just to lengthen out through the spine and the body again. Okay, so the next posture we're coming to is a supported bridge. So you could pop a cushion, a pillow, a block underneath your pelvis, or a bolster if you have one. Just depends how high you personally like it. So I do like quite a high bridge myself, so I'm using my bolster. But just so that your pelvis is slightly lifted, so it's slightly higher than it normally would. And then if you can really notice, you come into this position where the heart is now higher than the head. And then we're just going to hang out here. So you could have a little experiment with your legs if you wanted to. You don't need to keep them bent with the soles of the feet on the ground. You might want to extend the legs out long. That might not suit your lower back. You might want to bring the soles of the feet together and just allow the knees to drop out like a bound angle. You might take your feet out a little bit wider and allow the knees to drop together. So just finding some comfort. And then just check that your chin is slightly lifted, so you're keeping the back of the neck long, not dumping weight into that area. So you kind of really want all your weight to be going into the shoulders as opposed to the head and the neck. So just have a little check in there, make sure the weight's in the shoulders, lift the chin gently towards the sky, lengthen the back of the neck. And then whilst we're here, If you've got your legs in a different position, just bring them back so that the feet are flat on the ground. Just going to bring the right leg in towards the chest, hug it in, and extend the left leg out long. So we're just going to stretch out through the hip flexors, just release them a little bit. And you might want to give the ankle a little bit of a circle and a move around if that feels tight. Lovely. And then just swap in legs. So extend the right leg, draw that left leg in. Again, circling that ankle if that feels good. And then coming back to that position with both feet on the ground. And we're keeping our props where they are, but I want you to just readjust everything if you need to. You might find you move slightly when we move the legs. So just reposition, reset yourself. So keeping the arms on the ground. From here we're coming into waterfall pose. So this is like a version of legs up the wall, but without a wall. And all we're going to do is just float the legs up. So make sure the hips are supported. You don't feel like you're going to drop to the ground. Check that your weight is more into the shoulders. And the legs can really do whatever you like. If you feel like you want to sort of allow them to collapse in towards your head, you can. They might want to sort of bend in towards you. Just using as little effort as possible, really. We want the legs to feel like they're sort of floating. So don't feel like you have to try and keep the legs straight. That takes effort. If they naturally just want to fall in towards the body, allow that to happen. And this is a really great posture, particularly for the legs. If you have like restless leg syndrome or varicose veins, anything like that, because again it is allowing the blood flow to go in the opposite direction. So if you've got a job as well where you're sort of on your feet all day like I am, this is a really great one to do after a long day. Just reverse that effect of like standing up all day. Just allowing the legs to feel light and re-energized. If you do get restless leg syndrome, which I do occasionally, if it wakes you up in the night, rather than sort of struggle with all the twitchiness, and it's really annoying, I know, I've been there before, it's actually less time consuming for you to just swing around in your bed and prop your legs up the wall for a couple of minutes. It's really going to help to shift the energy of the legs and help you to get back to sleep much quicker than all the tossing and turning that you're otherwise likely to do. Sometimes when we wake up in the night we think, as long as I don't move too much, I'll get back to sleep quickly. And it doesn't always work. And when it comes to the legs being very, very twitchy and restless, in my experience, it's actually well worth just moving your body and just taking your legs up the wall for a couple of minutes. If you feel any sort of pins and needles or tingling in the legs and the feet, it's perfectly normal. It's just because the blood's draining away from those areas. Please don't worry, because when we bring the legs back down, it's going to go back there. So, not a widely known fact, but if you have varicose veins, they're not just in the legs, they come all the way down into the pelvis. So this is really beneficial for that, and it will help your pelvic health as well. So if you still menstruate, it's going to really help with your blood flow and easing tension in the pelvis. So this posture is so good for so many different things. As I mentioned, the legs, obviously we've got our heart slightly higher than our head, so it's really good for getting oxygen to the brain. It's a really great one to soothe the nervous system. This position, it really triggers our vagus nerves and tells our brain to relax our body. This is the kind of pose where if you just had time to do one pose, this would be the one I'd probably pick for all of its health benefits. It's going to help to relax you, it's going to recharge you, it's going to help your brain, it's going to reverse the effects of gravity. It's just a really brilliant sort of all-in-one posture that's also going to help to relax you. And as I said, it's more commonly called legs up the wall, but we're not actually using a wall for this particular version. But you can do this at a wall. It can be a little bit tricky for some people to get into because you really need to sit up against the wall and then swing your legs up. So this is a much easier option for most people. And just make sure you've got something soft underneath your pelvis. I often find that if I use a block, it just, the edges just dig into me. I'm quite bony in places, and I really feel sharp edges. Not sharp, but I feel the edges of the block. So just make sure that you're comfortable, because otherwise that can be really, really distracting, and it'll affect how long you're able to stay in a pose for. So I'm just going to shut up now and allow you to enjoy another minute or two in this position. So you might want to end in a shoulder stand, or if you already know that's not for you and not something you enjoy, you can absolutely stay here. If you want to come into a shoulder stand, this is another one that can be a bit of a faff to get into. You might be able to get into it from where you already are, just by sort of using your core strength to lift the hips up, placing the hands onto the lower back to support your body. Or another way to come into it, bring the feet back down to the ground and then place your props underneath the feet. Then lift the hips up as if you're coming into bridge, and that should help you to get your hands underneath the pelvis and lower back, and then lifting the hands and the legs up. Or you might just choose to keep your feet on the props and support your lower back. Just make sure if you are in a shoulder stand, again, cannot stress this enough, the weight is into your shoulders, not into your head and your neck. So I'm actually going to come back to the legs up the wall variation. I do like shoulder stand, but sometimes I'm just not feeling it. Now is one of those times. With shoulder stand, it does require quite a lot of sort of muscular energy. You need to contract your muscles. I just find this a lot more relaxing. So not staying in shoulder stand for too long if you are in a shoulder stand. Just a minute or so before slowly making your way out with control. Don't sort of allow your body to slam back down to earth. So whatever position you're in, we're going to make our way out. Slowly bringing the feet back to the ground. And lift the hips to remove any props. Just removing the props completely. And we're going to come to our Shavasana without any props today. As comfortable as we all probably find them. We just want to allow our body to be flat and to reset itself. So take up some space on your mat, closing down the eyes. And just mentally scan through the body, noticing any areas of tension or tightness. Can you release those? Can you relax a little deeper? Bring your awareness to any part of the body that's touching the ground. Feel that support from beneath you. Know that you are safe. And allow yourself to relax fully. So just bringing back some small movements, wiggling fingers and toes. Of course, if you want to stay here longer, you absolutely can. Otherwise, maybe taking the arms up overhead, take a full body stretch. And bending the knees and gently roll to one side and pause there. You can use your hands to gently press back up whenever you're ready to. Take your time. Lovely. Excuse me. Thank you so much for joining me for this practice. Look at my hair. Yeah, I hope you felt some benefits and really found a posture that you feel like you could perhaps practice every day to help with the effects of gravity and also to help get some oxygen to the brain. Let me know how you get on. You can let me know in the comments below here or in the group. Okay, and shall see you soon.